What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Raiden Dionisio. Today, I have with me, she is a military spouse and also a child, military child, as her husband and her father were in the Army. She is a franchise consultant for FranChoice, providing a targeted solution to finding the perfect opportunities by matching qualified candidates with high-performing franchise companies. I have Diane Pleuss. Diane, how you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you. Happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I mentioned your husband and your grandfather were in the military. Uh, you know, our audience is mainly veterans and active duty. Can you just share a little bit about them, what branch they served with, during what time?
Sure. My dad was in World War II.
Okay.
And he served primarily, I believe, in India. What I remember is that he brought back this large snake skin from his service there, which was probably illegal. I don't know, but I can remember
not back then.
It to grade school for show and tell.
Yeah.
He was enormously proud of his service, and he would talk about it. He would get emotional. He would get a tear in his eye. It was quite the adventure for him. My family is dairy farmers. I have one uncle who is not a dairy farmer, but everybody else is. And his older brother got the farm. So my dad was drafted and went through San Francisco, was deployed, and learned a lot. He had all his photo albums, everything was labeled. He kept in touch with them. And I have to share that my mother passed when she was 65, and my dad had always wanted to see some of his Army buddies. So he called up one of them and said, my daughter said she'll travel with me. So we went to, I think it was Columbus, Ohio, to see one of his Army friends, and they just caught up on all these years. And on his headstone, he has this little emblem that indicates that he had served, and he made sure that that would be on there because, again, there's a tremendous amount of pride for his country and what he had done.
Yeah, and then definitely, salute to your dad. Obviously during that time, right? World War II, the greatest generation for all that they've done and the sacrifices that they made.
Yeah. And I have to double check. I think he may have also been in Australia. I should really check with my brother on some of those details. It has been a while. And my husband was drafted after he got done with college, and he served in Vietnam. And I think he had 2 tours in Vietnam. Probably doesn't talk about it as much as my dad did.
Mm-hmm. So Diane, growing up as a military child and also a military spouse, can you share a little bit about that experience and kind of just how were you able to find what I call your service, your second service?
Sure. Well, I think I was brought up with hard work, integrity. You do the right thing, you help out. Growing up on a dairy farm, there's never really a day off. The cows need to be milked every single day. And in the summer, when crops needed to be coming, you planned accordingly, you worked hard. There was a lot of fulfillment from seeing work that was being done and seeing crops grow. When we had a cash crop in sweet corn, and we lived right next to a small lake. So the cottagers, we call them the cottage people, would place orders for fresh sweet corn. So we would ask, what type of corn did they like? Did they like new ears? Did they like full ears? And what time were they going to come to pick it up? And then we'd go into the field and we would pick it about half an hour before, making sure we got exactly what kind of ears they wanted, and we would have it ready for them. So I think I learned hard work, customer service, and also helping out with a farm. Many times my dad and the neighbors would share machinery, or they would help out with baling or some of those things because it needed to be done. And you just did it. You just helped out. And no one really kept track of, oh, I put in so many hours and he only put in so many hours. I never, ever heard that. It was just, you helped out, you did what was right, and life continued and it was good.
Yeah, it was all about like the teamwork and the camaraderie with it.
Yes, yes, yes.
There's no I in team, so to say.
There really wasn't. And I don't think I was even aware of those things. To me, it was just second nature. And sometimes I have to chuckle now when I hear all the people talking about organic foods and things like that. Well, we had this enormous garden, so everything was organic. And as a kid, what I liked was going to my grandmother's house, my dad's mother, and she would have creamed corn out of a can. And I thought that was the coolest thing, because we never got to buy anything that was canned or frozen because we always had it. We grew it.
That's awesome.
And now I look at canned corn and I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I like this. But I think there's a bit of whatever you don't have, you're somewhat attracted to. But we grew up all with the fresh fruits and vegetables. We, slaughtered our own cows, and we had pigs and we had chickens. So we had the eggs and gathered the eggs, did all those types of things that now seem a bit novel, but at that time, that's just what it was.
That's awesome. Just growing up on a farm and having your own food there, and not have to go buy things in a canned food. That's pretty awesome. Diane, so how did you throughout that time, how did you find out about franchising, and how did you get involved as a franchise consultant, like I mentioned earlier?
Sure. It was really a serendipitous route, and hopefully that will relate to some of the people that are listening. So I had been in business and enjoyed it. I had been in advertising and marketing. And my husband took a job in California. We'd been living in the Midwest. I was the trailing spouse, and decided I wanted to make a change because it was a pretty demanding job. And we had a young daughter. My husband had been home with her, but now that he was going back to work, that meant that I was going to be taking care of her. I just wanted to have more flexibility. So I answered one newspaper ad back when that's what you did. And it was for a franchise consulting company as a marketing director. I thought, gee, that sounds interesting. I didn't know anything about franchising, but I felt I had transferable skills, and they hired me. So that allowed me to start to learn about franchising. I worked for a franchise company and learned all about that and the different systems and things that they provide to help their franchisees so they can be successful. And many of the people I work with want to have their own business, but they may not have particular skills. And what's, I think, so nice about franchising, and particularly for veterans, is they can take some of those transferable skills, some of the leadership development that they learn, the management experience, some of their organizational skills. They probably could be very good at logistics, or they have that infrastructure of systems and they follow things. And those are things that franchise companies are looking for. So the franchise company can teach them the specifics. Many times they don't want the person working in the business. They want that franchisee working on the business, hiring techs to do the actual work, and they want them driving the business, managing it, being involved with the community. So a lot of the things that the veterans are learning are directly applicable to business ownership.
And the franchise, the ad that you saw, is that like the same company, that franchise company that you're working for now, or was that something different?
It is not. I was hired by this franchise consulting company, and the president was recruited to become president of a packaging and ship company and brought me along as the marketing director. Unfortunately, the company went through some hard times. And again, like many people, I was downsized, and I was pretty shocked and surprised because I was part of senior management and looked at all the weekends I had given up for travel and things that I had done. So I had a little pity party for a little while and then got over that. Two of the men that I had worked with had been invited to join FranChoice, which is a franchise consulting company that matches people. And we're all independent consultants under that umbrella. And they said, Diane, you would love it over here. If you could be invited, please accept. Because where we had worked as well, sometimes I would talk to someone that was looking at buying the franchise. And I was not in franchise development, I was in marketing. And sometimes I think, oh, this person would be great, they would do really well. And other times I think, oh, I don't think you're going to be successful here. I hope you pick another franchise, but I couldn't say anything because I was employed. And so what I love so much now about what I do is I don't have to force that round peg into that square hole, because we work with a whole range of franchise companies. And I like to present several so a person can learn about them. They can compare and contrast and really decide which would be the best one for them. Sometimes people come to me and they say, we think we'd like to do this. And I say, well, that sounds good. Let's look at that, but maybe we could even find something better. Let's explore, let's understand, let's look at your skills and your goals and what you bring to the table, and then see what would be some great options for you.
So from what I'm hearing, Diane, basically as a franchise consultant, you kind of just help them in making that decision in picking, whereas before you only had one, and picking various different franchises that would fit, their personality or whatnot. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes. So I might present three options, and one might be a lower investment, one might be a mid-range investment, one might be a stretch investment. So they could compare and see what impact does that investment have and what's the return. One thing that's very interesting and very noteworthy is there's no direct correlation between what you invest and the revenue you can make. No direct correlation. So sometimes people, if they have certain abilities and skills, they could go with a low investment franchise and do extraordinarily well and have a great return. And who doesn't want that?
So can you give us some examples of, you mentioned a low, a middle, and a higher tier of investments. Can you give us an example of one of each?
Sure. Let me give examples to start of lower investment. And those would usually be a service-based business that could run out of a home office, or possibly something that's mobile out of a vehicle, or possibly an office suite. So if we look at that lower investment, it might be, for example, a service-based business for painting, where the franchise owner is not the painter, but they are contracting or hiring the painters. They are giving the estimates, they're involved in the community, they're overseeing the crews, they're running the business.
Okay.
And that can be done from a home office. At some point in time, they might grow to a warehouse or an industrial location, but to start, it would be considered fairly reasonable. If we were to look at maybe that next range, would be a business that might need to run out of a warehouse or an executive suite to start. So let's take something like a senior care franchise. Now that is not the large facility where you would go, but it's an office where you would interview and hire and train caregivers to go out and help usually elderly parents, or sometimes again, veterans who have been injured that need assistance. And with that, that's kind of a, lower mid-range investment, but you do have to sign a lease, and it is a little more involved. And then certainly anything that is brick and mortar would be your higher investment. And that could be your coffee shop, it could be fast food, it could be fitness, it could be a hair salon, it could be a massage studio, a nail salon, or some things that immediately come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
with that, of course, the location is more important. And with a service-based business, if the location isn't as important. So even if we take the senior care that is based out of an office, if I am the franchise company and I'm providing care to you, you don't really care where I'm located. You just care that I run a good business. The caregivers are kind, they're helpful, they show up on time, they do what they need to, and everything runs and works. And usually with a business like that, you can start with a small office. Again, they want you to conserve capital. And as your business grows, you may grow to another business. In fact, I've put a number of people into senior care franchises, and that's exactly what they've done. They started with a small office that was professional, but as they grew and they added internal office staff, they moved to another location, and they didn't lose any customers in the process.
That's funny. You mentioned senior care because actually my parents they have that background. My mom's a retired nurse. They had that background of assisted living, so they just moved from California to Florida and looking to start that back up again. And you know, when I retire from the military, that's one of the things that I want to do. How does one get involved with, you know, that senior care franchises and things like that?
Well, part of what I do is the matching and the introduction.
Okay.
So if you were interested in something like that, companies are usually looking for someone that has both a heart for seniors and a head for business. They want that combination.
That's a good one.
And if that's the case, then I look at territory and I match companies. Some senior care franchise companies also offer medical care, and some do not. And sometimes people want to be the empire builder, or they want to grow a larger business, so they may want to have 2 territories or possibly even 3 territories. So again, when we're discussing things, I'll ask about that, and I may make a recommendation based on that or some other things. You know, a variety of things come into play.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Excuse me. And then once you start the franchise investigation, then you're talking directly with each company, with the franchise development rep. And usually we'll have weekly calls where I'll ask, what are you learning? What are you liking? What's your homework? What are your concerns? To make sure that we're going down the right track, that you're getting the information that you need. And I try to be that resource and that sounding board for you.
And I guess depending as far as like from when you decide to when it you know, your franchise starts, does it depend on what level of, you mentioned low, middle, and high? Does it like how long does that process take basically?
Sure. Usually to investigate a franchise, many times is a 4 to 6 to 8 week process. So franchise companies are very organized. A first call is usually an overview call. They talk about how they were started, the founders, their vision for the company. They'll talk about their process. The second call many times is what we call a unit economics call, where they'll talk about the investment and the opportunity. After that, they'll have calls where they'll talk about their advertising and marketing, their IT platform, their training, their support, the territory, all of those types of things. They'll usually have a dedicated call where they'll talk about the legal document, the franchise disclosure document. And then you come to what's usually the most fun part, which is talking to other franchise owners, which in franchise language terms is called validation. So sometimes that's a group call, sometimes that's individual calls. Again, I provide questions to ask and how to go about asking them so that you get the most information. Then the last step is usually called the discovery day or meet the team day. It can be virtual or in person. You meet everyone there, you get your final questions answered, and then you decide yes or no. So up until this whole time, you're learning about the company, they're learning about you. It's a two-way street. So a franchise company wants to make sure that you're successful, and you want to make sure you pick the right one.
So, you mentioned about the, picking a franchise, the different types of calls, the process. I want to get into funding, and it always comes down to money, right? And especially for veterans who want to get involved with franchising, how does that work as far as with funding? And do veterans get some sort of discount with the franchise?
Yes, I'm very happy to say that many franchise companies offer a discount to veterans. There's a program called a Vet Fran program,
Right.
and many companies participate in that. They will either give a hard dollar amount or a percentage off the franchise fee. It could vary from $1,000 or $2,000. I worked with one sergeant major, and he got $10,000 off the franchise fee. So that's very significant. And I have to say too, when he went to Discovery Day and they introduced him, they introduced his background, everyone applauded, and they were just so thrilled that he was looking at their franchise because they could see the background that he brought and the ethics and how he was going to run the business. They were very excited. So many companies offer a discount.
Okay.
And then usually we'll also look at what other funding options are available, whether that's an SBA loan or sometimes home equity. They may have retirement funds that they can use. And many times I will introduce them to what we call a funding partner that can go into detail and can talk about different options, terms, what it looks like, the documentation that they'll need, etc. So keep in mind that not many people come to the table with a bucket of cash to say, I can pay for this business in cash. There are a few, but most of the time people come just like a home. They get pre-qualified and they can say, I can pay for this much and I need a loan for the balance. And that's the reality.
That's great to hear, and I appreciate you for sharing that. I want to go back to the senior care, the assisted living franchise, because I'm very interested in it. And so once you do get one location, right? If you mentioned earlier, if you wanted to build like some sort of empire, if you wanted to expand, do you just buy another one similar to the first, or do you does it just depend on the franchise? Do you buy a bigger one?
Well, usually companies will have a territory, and it is
Okay.
based on, for example, with the senior care, it's based on number of seniors 65 plus, number of seniors 75 plus. And you might look at that. And if you're looking at, for example, doing 2 territories or possibly 3 territories, many times the company will either discount the second or the third territory, the franchise fee, if you purchase it at the same time. Not
Okay.
everyone feels comfortable with that. I've had people that have started with one and grown it and successful and came back, and fortunately there is still territory available. So you look at that and you weigh your options. You say, gee, I would like to have a second territory, but it means a bigger investment.
Right.
Can you afford to make that now? Will the territory be available when you would want to expand? So those are things that we talk about, that we discuss. Many times, if you do a 2 territory option, you'd want to have an office somewhat centrally located to both. If you start with one option, one territory, you'd want that office centrally located for that. Some franchise companies, if you add a second territory, you need to add a second office. Some you don't. That's getting into more details. But those would be the types of things that we would be talking about.
Okay. And then Diane, how long have you been doing this as a franchise consultant?
I'm proud to say that I have been doing this now for 17 years.
Wow.
This is
Okay.
my anniversary month, November.
That's awesome.
And prior to that, I had been on the franchisor side for 5-6 years, something like that as well. And I have the highest regard for my colleagues who are knowledgeable, helpful. Many consultants also own franchises or have put family members into franchises. They're long-term. It's a outstanding organization.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because you're not just advising people to go this route, right? You're actually doing it yourself, which is what you want to see from somebody.
Right. And in many respects, we truly are changing lives. We are working with people, we're giving them options and choices. And I will share that I worked with one man who was a veteran, and just the nicest man, but he didn't have a lot of financial wherewithal. And technically, I should probably not have been working with him because he was at that point not financially qualified.
Okay.
But he was able to figure that out, and he did move forward with a franchise. And in fact, he bought a senior care franchise. Just ironically, and I'm happy to say he did extraordinarily well. And he has since retired. He bought and built his dream home next to a golf course, and his daughter is now running the franchise. So here we have someone who was just a great person who needed the franchise for the systems, and he had everything else. He was just this wonderful person and bought the franchise for that infrastructure, and then was able to hand it down to his daughter, and still checks in, but now she is running it. And to me, that's just a total home run, because he did well. He laid the groundwork. He's helping people. He, again, is a very proud veteran, and I have seen some of his pictures, and I believe his dad was also a veteran. So again, it runs in the family, and I probably should have done some checking on that so I could have the specifics, but it's a wonderful story.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I think that's like the ultimate dream, right? Is like at the end of the day, you mentioned earlier, right? You don't want to work in your business, you want to work on your business. And then that's great to hear from him that, you know, he was able to pass that down to his kid, to his daughter. So
yeah, again, always assuming that they are interested, and one can never make that assumption.
Yeah.
But I think it's just very gratifying when that happens, when you've built a solid foundation and you've got the business, and then you can see your child has that same compassionate heart and wants to be involved in the community and give back and help and provide this service. You know, to me, how wonderful to be able to carry on that tradition.
So Diane, you know, you have me convinced. I'm sure you have some of our audience out there convinced. What's one actionable step that we can, you know, somebody out there that might be interested in franchising? What's one actionable step that you can provide for them right now?
Well, if they would like to chat about it, they could certainly schedule a call with me. I have a website called quickchatwithdiane.com,
Okay.
because I also have a website which is Diane Pleuss, but then you have to know how to spell Pleuss, which is Pleuss. So that's why we have the quickchatwithdiane.com, because it's memorable. Also on LinkedIn, I'm known as, I branded myself as the franchise fitter. Again, just that people could type that in and find me. My services are completely free. We are paid by the franchise companies for the pre-screening, the qualification, the matching we do. So recognize that, but certainly if anyone has questions, if they just want to talk, if they want to see if now is a good time, it's never the perfect time, but
Right.
we'll look at it. And I've worked with people and we've moved ahead. And then I've also worked with people that have come back a year or 7 years. And I had one person who came back 11 years later. So there are many things, there's many questions. It's not a decision that you take lightly. It's not something that I take lightly, but I try to be that resource and help that person so they can be successful and happy.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, and we'll put this in the show notes as well. That's quickchatwithdiane.com, and also your website, DianePleuss.com.
Yes.
Awesome, Diane. So, Dan, before we go into the second segment of the podcast here, what's one thing you want our listeners, our viewers, to take away from this episode?
That franchising, it's much more than French fries and fast food.
Yeah.
There are lots of different options if you have an open mind and are willing to look at this whole range of different companies. So I would ask our listeners to expand their horizons because there's wonderful opportunities out there. So don't limit yourself. And sometimes I think we do. And part of me wants to be that cheerleader that says, look, you could do this, but you can have more control. You can have more flexibility. Let's look and see if it's a fit. And if it's not, that is absolutely fine. But then you're making that decision rather than looking back with regrets.
I love what you said there. Franchising is more than French fries and fast food. Because
Yes.
when the regular person thinks about franchising, they think about McDonald's or
Exactly.
That's
and well, they should, because McDonald's is 50 plus years old, kind of the granddaddy. McDonald's has minted more millionaires than anyone. So they deserve our respect. They have developed strong infrastructure and systems, and in many respects, they've overcome a lot of objections of, mad cow disease and environmental concerns. So they've worked with their franchisees, and some of their franchisees have developed products. And it's not perfect, but it is an excellent example. It's just that most people can't afford it, and territory may not be available.
And also McDonald's is more on the real estate business than they are in the fast food business.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
All right, Diane. So going into our second segment of the podcast here, this is what I call the Fast Five. These are the same 5 questions I ask my guests. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So first question, Diane, what's one hobby you enjoy?
One hobby I enjoy is running. Now, I am very much a back of the pack runner, but I enjoy it. It clears my head. I love those endorphins. And I started a running streak not quite 600 days ago. Wow. I had been planning to hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim, and that was canceled because of COVID. And I was in kind of a frump, and I decided, let's do a running streak. So I have been running minimum of a mile a day, usually 2 to 3. My goal is always 20 miles a week. And if you just do basic math, 20 miles a week, 50 weeks a year, that's 1,000 miles a year. So I've hit my 1,000 miles a year already this year because it's been a good year, and I hope to continue.
So you've ran 1 mile a day for 600 days and counting. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, minimum of a mile. Usually minimum. I try to do 2 or 3. So I do have a strategy. My strategy is Monday through Friday, I run 2 miles a day minimum. Saturday, I run 6 miles, and then Sunday, I run 4. So that gives me 20 miles for the week. And the Monday through Friday is very manageable. And Saturday is a little bit of a test because it's longer. And then Sunday is usually 4 miles again. It seems easier after you've just done 6.
That is awesome. Congratulations, Diane. That's great.
Thank you. I had never done that. I had been warned not to do it. And for some reason, I've just embraced it, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, some people
can't even do it. Who knew, right?
Some people can't even do it for a week, for 7 days, and you've been doing it for 600 plus days. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Next question. If you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
It would be Steph Curry from the Golden State Warriors.
You're from Cali, right? Is it?
Well, I'm not originally from California, but I'm
Right,
from the
but
San Francisco Bay
right.
Area. Yes. So there was just an article in the paper on him that he is trying to improve his shot, a swish within a swish. So he's using technology to get even better so that it just goes in the center of the rim. And I just think anyone that has that dedication and wants to continue to be better and has that positive attitude and seems to be pretty selfless, he's involved in the community. I just like the things that he is doing and that work ethic. So he would be a person I would love to chat with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's like perfection right there. It's quite arguably the best shooter of all time, and he's still trying to be 1% better. So
yes.
Next question, Dan. Recommend a book for our audience to read.
One book that I really enjoyed is called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. But I would like to have a little asterisk by my answer or your question, is that I actually prefer the audiobook on that. I love the voice. And when I listen to it, it's like they're talking to me. So I have the book and I've read the book, but the audio file, I just love.
So listen to the audiobook of Success Principles.
Yes.
I'll have to check that out.
And Jack Canfield is the person who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul and that whole series. But in the Success Principles, I think he lays a number of things out that, again, is applicable to anyone and everyone at any stage in their life.
Next question, Diane. What's your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is the one that's in my email signature. It is, success requires 3 bones: wishbone, backbone, and funny bone. The quote is by Kobe Yamada. And last year I did a little video about that quote because I just was inspired by it. So I talked about the quote. So if you go on LinkedIn or my YouTube channel, you may find me talking about that quote. And I think it's especially relevant for business owners. You have to have a wish, you have to have a dream, you have to want something a little bit more to become a business owner. You have to have some backbone because it's not going to be easy and there are going to be days that are struggles and difficult. And you have to have a funny bone too, because sometimes you have to laugh at yourself or you have to look at that situation. You can't take it too seriously. So to me, that summarizes things in just one sentence. To me, I'm so impressed.
So simple and
so simple,
catchy,
right?
Yeah. So that you said Kobe Yamada?
Yes. Okay. Success requires 3 bones: wishbone, backbone, and funny bone. Kobe Yamada.
I love that. Dropping some golden grenades here, Diane. Next question. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
In a year, I hope to still be running. I hope to still be doing franchise consulting because I very much enjoy it. I work from a home office. I love my commute down the hall. But in probably 5 years and 10 years, I would probably like to retire, travel, help out, volunteer with organizations, do some of those traditional things, kick back a little bit. When I was going to grad school, I was also working full-time, and I said no to so many things because no, I have to study, no, I have to write a paper. Right. And now I think, gee, when I retire, maybe I'll take up some of these other things. Maybe I'll take up bridge. I've started it and never got into it. Didn't really make the time for it. So I have a whole list of things that I would like to do that I haven't done so far, in addition to travel, certain movies, read certain books, stay on top of things, the current events. It's a pretty long list.
have more of you time, right? Take care of
Yes,
yourself and do the things
a
that you
little bit.
wanted it to. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. Well, Diane, this has been a great episode. Like I said, you've dropped some great information for not only for our audience but for me as well. For been taking some notes down here, and thank you for all the knowledge with regards to franchising. And before we go, where can our audience, where can they follow you, and where can they support you at?
Thank you very much for asking. My website is dianepleuss.com. That's DIANE, P as in Peter, LEUSS as in Sam. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Diane Pleuss, the franchise fitter, or again, quickchatwithdiane.com.
Awesome. And again, we'll also have those on the show notes for everybody to click and make sure you connect with Diane with regards to franchising. Diane, thanks again for the time, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. It's been my honor and privilege, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dan.